What's up, chat? What's up, chat? Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Redundant Reincarnation Part 3, question mark. Isolde looks for a husband. We're getting into Isolde, finally, who she meets, that they alluded to way back there with the Journey of Two Lifetimes manga, little extra chapter there, but we're finally getting to that. I, truth be told, have not gotten too deep into looking into these chapters, so this is going to be pretty fresh for me. I did break it down and everything. I do know who she ends up with. I kind of seen it coming. There was a side of me that kind of see that was like the only real choice based on all the male. I mean, it could have been a female, but she says husband, so I don't know. Based on what we had available to us, I'm like, that seems to be the only one, but it's going to be weird. It's going to be hard to explain it to us, so we're going to see how well Refugin explains that to me. But I'm interested to get into these chapters. I just want to know more about Isolde, really. I think that's really the big part of these chapters, getting to know more about Isolde, besides the fact that she loses her master, you know, gets a little upset, and then ends up being friends. Well, it's always been friends with Edis. But anyways, before we get into that, though, hey, chat. Hope you guys do well. Thank you guys so much for the premiere. Really greatly appreciate you guys' support, your kind words, all that stuff. It means a great, great deal to me. It's because of you guys that makes Mushoku Monday what it is, as always. It would not be anything without you guys, and I love you guys' support. But yes, greatly, greatly appreciate everybody's support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Rose Moith with last week, holding the chat with 21 months and a super. Thank you so much, Rose Moith, for your ongoing support. It means a great, great deal to me. You're awesome. With that said, let's get into it, chat. Before I get into that, though, I did want to say something, and I didn't think about it last week, and I kick myself for not thinking about it. I just want to say, I'm not going to get into great details about it, but I just want to say one thing that was just... it had me screaming inside the entire time I was editing last Mushoku Monday and the entire time I was watching the premiere. So I was probably there with a couple other people. No mention of Orsted in the entire chapter, perspective chapter for Lucy. Refugin. Like, it's one of those moments where I'm like, I'm thinking, I'm getting into it. It's one of those moments where I'm thinking, am I misremembering? I'm pretty sure they detailed the fact, well, they didn't detail it. They just mentioned several times that Orsted was training Lucy. Am I bugging out here? Am I like, did I misremember that? I'm pretty sure Orsted was training her every now and then. No mention. Like, no mention of her second papa, Orsted. I mean, that was the whole joke there. The whole joke of Rudius thinking that Lucy thought that her papa was Orsted is because he's been training her. No mention. I don't know. It could turn into some weird thing where Orsted was making her forget him. I don't know. I just want to rant about that. Refugin, you failed miserably. I think that was a massive, massive lost opportunity there. But anyways, let's get into it, chat. The Seven Knights of Asura, Chapter 1, Isolde looks for a husband. Long, long ago, back before water god style existed, there was a country terrorized by the Sea Dragon King. They had fished in the Sea Dragon King's water and incurred its displeasure. Almost every day, fishing boats were ravaged, and sea dragons began to appear in the ports. Though the knights of that land tried to stand against it, the sea dragons were vast and glided through the water. They were strong and rapidly wore down the kingdom's forces. Doom was nigh. The matter weighed heavily on the king. He declared that he would give his daughter and his throne to anyone who slayed the Sea Dragon King. In response, many knights, champions, and heroes challenged the Sea Dragon King, yet all were defeated. One day, a man appeared. A battered old sword hung on his hip, and his garb was ragged. Recent tales painted him as breathtakingly handsome, but in the truest retellings, he was no sight to behold. He looked like a vagabond, his face smeared with grime. He went by the name of Radar. Radar? Like Rada? Question mark? That's the first thing that stood out to me. Well, first things first, I'm kind of curious what the Sea Dragon King is. I would assume that the Sea Dragon King would be from the Dragon World? Question mark? He presented himself to the king and asked if he might slay the Sea Dragon King. Naturally, the king said yes. He's like, no, you look too ugly, get out of here. Though he had half hoped and didn't have faith in the stranger. But Radar was strong. He froze the surface of the sea to peer underneath into its depths, spying on the movements of the sea dragons. Then, quick as a blink, he closed on the Sea Dragon King. The Sea Dragon King smashed through his ice, writhing as it lashed out at Radar. With his battered old sword, this brave soul turned aside its deadly attack, then struck back with a blow that lobbed the head right off the beast. With the Sea Dragon King's head in hand, Radar returned to the kingdom, where a hero's welcome should have awaited him. Though the king lavished upon him enough gold and jewels that he never needed to work another day, that was all he received. For at the last moment, the king decided to withhold the hand of his daughter and his throne. Ooh, that ain't gonna go good. Radar was not angry, but a great sadness came over him, for he was in love with the princess. Aww. As he watched her from afar at the parades and ceremonies, she had won his heart, though he knew that he could have taken the throne by force if he desired. Yeah, that was my immediate thought. If you're putting that out for them, and the dude goes out and takes something out that nobody else is able to take down, you better be fearing for your own life. Though he knew that he could have taken the throne by force if so desired, Radar decided that if he could not marry his beloved, he would leave this country. Yet there was one who became angry in his place. The princess. Oh, the princess, as Lisa's upset about it. She railed against the king, punching and kicking him. Before storming out of the castle, she went after Radar, catching up to him as he made to leave the country, and throwing herself at his feet. I have given up my country. I am no longer a princess. I have no name. In making me yours, you will not gain a kingdom, nor will you become king, if that is acceptable to you. I beg you, make me your wife. Oh, so romantic. Such a Hollywood ending. With a smile, Radar took the princess in his arms. Together, they left the kingdom. The pair were married, and they disappeared. Years later, in some far-off world, the water god style was born, or so it is said. This episode was a basis for the law that states, the water god's champion shall forsake their name. Makes me wonder if the whole style itself was born from this guy or not. Again, it seems a little convenient, the fact that it's Radar and not Rada, but I don't know if it's going to be that obvious there. Like, Rada was like some sort of descendant of this particular love. I don't know. Isolde was the head of the water god style in Asura, as well as one of the sword instructors for the kingdom's Knight Order. At present, she was the Water Emperor. Not gotten the god yet, eh? But she'd only just learned a third of the water god style's 5 secret techniques. In a few months, there would be a ceremony in which she would take the name that declared her water god. There you go. Her age was unclear, but she looked like she was in her 20s. She had aristocratic features and lovely hair so dark that it was almost blue. Her beauty was plain to see, but some whispered that she used makeup to look younger. In the whisper, make sure not to hear that. In the whole of Asura, the only person who knew her age was Queen Ariel. Isolde was actively searching for a husband. When she became the water god, it would mean an end to many, many moons of strict training. From here on, she would continue to hone her skills, but it was a milestone, so she felt it was about time that she thought about marriage. Unfortunately, her search was not going smoothly. It wasn't that she lacked potential partners, of course. The water god-to-be was in demand, especially by water god-style swordsmen. There was no shortage of men who was entranced by her beauty and impressed by the dedication to her training. Yeah, it was funny because Rudius was sort of implying the idea that why is nobody, like, clamoring to get this girl? It kind of implied this idea that she's so, like, up there that nobody dares touch her. And again, that was, like, my prediction around whoever does catch her is just somebody who's just brave enough to step up there and say, similar to, again, Cliff to Ellen Lise, I want to protect you. Who would tell me that they protect me, the water god style leader right now? If they were swordsmen, they lived by the blade. Few were broad-minded enough to marry a woman who was stronger than they were. Yep, again, they feel less. Isolde, for her part, would have preferred a man who was her equal, or at least someone with king-tier abilities. And then that's the problem. It's like, she's saying preferred, but there's the other problem is if she puts limits there as well, it's like someone who's probably an 8 in looks or whatever, saying that they expect to find somebody that's an 8 or above to themselves. Good luck. Enjoy being alone. An Asura nobleman would do, and women of the water god style were popular in Asura. Swordswomen of the defensive water god style, unlike their sword god counterparts, were not overly assertive. They were soft-spoken and feminine. They can be confrontational at times, and they knew their own minds. Again, yeah, definitely something they've played out several times. I mean, the idea that noblemen, people of noble families, were training in water god style. It kind of gives them more sense of being more reserved, more refined. Whereas, yeah, the sword god style is offensive, constantly aggro. In Isolde's case, it makes me kind of wonder what kind of a girl Edis would have been if it was forced into her brain to be water god style and not sword god style. She'd be a much different girl. She might have been more like Isolde. She would never break, though. She would never break into that mold. In Isolde's case, she knew how to conduct herself at court. She was young, pretty, good-natured, and would respect her husband. On top of that, she was a skilled swordswoman. There were many Asura noblemen who liked to make her their wife. They would have her wait on them during the day and warm their beds at night. Needless to say, Isolde was not interested in a husband with only prurient interests. But every now and then, she would meet someone and think, he might do. He had good looks, good nature, and good pedigree, and he wasn't a bad swordsman. This charmer kept his perversions well hidden, and came up to her flashing a mouthful of pearly white teeth. It was the prince. Isolde fell for him hard. Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. No. 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 I mean, he does look dashing. He does have that look about him. She fell for him, even as the people around her told her, not him. That one's a scumbag when he can get away with it. The fact was, the prince was good looking and friendly, and Isolde couldn't resist a pretty face. He might do, she thought. No! Run! Run! Oh, man. But when Isolde gave the prince a caveat, he retracted his offer of marriage without a single thought. I'm guessing a restriction that only her? Because she's of Mil's faith, right? One day, I will be a water god, and take the name of the water god Rhea. If you marry me, you must forsake your name and family. The water god's companion may not have a family name. Huh? Are we talking about the same prince here? Because damn sure he wouldn't be giving up his name. Interesting. But yeah, that's even more interesting. The idea that there seems to be some sort of restriction within the water god style, at least. And the idea that whoever marries the water god has to give up their name. Huh. Well, it simply says the water god's companion may not have a family name. So it's just basically saying that he can't have a family name specifically. Oh, the legend. Okay. The legend. Okay. Yeah. The legend of Vadar. The idea that it's taking the whole lore from that. The princess, when she chased after him, she gave up her family name. She gave up her family heritage. She gave up her rights in that kingdom. Gave up her family name, and thus whoever chases after this water god now will have to give up their name. It's become like, that's so goofy. I'm sorry, that's cheesy as hell. Whatever. That's stupid. Lineage kind of stuff. This was the custom of the water god, yep. There was no penalties for failing to respect it, nor any benefit in doing so. It was simply a tradition of the water gods, including the former water god Rhea, who was Isolde's grandmother. There's a finally connection. I mean, it was kind of alluded to, but I felt like it was kind of loose there. Is it really legit her grandmother? Isolde's father had no family name either. Clua was her mother's name. As such, Isolde, who revered her grandmother, intended to respect the custom as well. But alas, the prince who had so royally reeled her in. That looks like a mistake. That seems like a goof up. Is that a Seven Seas oopsie moment? Yeah, that seems weird. The prince who had royally reeled her in was a noble. The extra her I don't think is supposed to be there. Or here. I guess that could have been it too. It reads so weird, my brain was breaking. But alas, the prince who had royally reeled her in was a noble. He had been born a noble and lived as one. His life was built on his family rank. No one wanted to marry Isolde enough to forsake their name and family. So they're not like the princess. They're not strong enough like the princess. No matter how much they liked her, Isolde was worried. No one wanted to marry Isolde enough to forsake their family and name. No matter how much they liked her, Isolde was worried. Several years had passed since she started looking for a husband. She had a few prospects, but always stumbled at the final hurdle. At this rate, she wouldn't find a husband before she took the water god's name. Yet Isolde had confidence in herself. She was well groomed, a great cook, and could put on makeup like an artist. I guess there's the answer there. She's definitely powdering on. She never skipped a day of hair and skincare. She liked to think that she was an excellent speaker. Her water god style training had included the art of conversation, where you coax the other party into speaking first. Even when she's talking, she's employing the water god style. Get them to talk first and then counter. Get them to talk first and counter. She really was doing her best. Despite all her efforts, however, she still couldn't find a husband. At his head, even Nina had... What a debuff right there. What an absolute gut punch. What a stab in the rib. Even they pulled it off. But she somehow just couldn't do it. They both had childhood friends, and they didn't have any restrictive traditions to follow. Yeah, I mean, it's technically one of the rare W's for a story to actually have the childhood friends actually win. My gosh, wow, shocking there. But I mean, again, the tradition is pretty much the hang-up point. Stop going after people with names. That's your answer, Isolde. Stop going for people that have names. Isolde had thought that she was charming enough to make up for that. Her standards had been high, but she believed at some point she would find the perfect match. She'd always been able to do anything that she set her mind to. Again, I think her only problem is setting all those standards. You're setting all the standards. They have to be this. They have to be this high in swordsmanship. They have to be good looking. They have to have this. They have to have this. Look for love. Don't look for to match these little checkpoints. What number was he? After a long pause, Isolde muttered, 21. She had been dumped 21 times. If you included the ones that she had broken up with, that number would have been even higher. I see. Isolde was in her living room at home, sitting across from her older brother. The house was adjoined to the training hall. Isolde's brother, Tantris Kul, was an advanced tier water god-style swordsman. He was the eldest son of the Kul family, but compared to his little sister, he was only a minor talent. That's kind of crazy to think. They're both in the same family of swordsmen, and literally, she just destroys him in talent. Despite his grueling efforts, he didn't have what it took to get any higher than advanced tier. He was an honest man, however. He'd even rejected his grandmother Rada when she offered, "How about I make you a saint tier, eh?" by saying, "I have no need for a title I do not deserve." Respect. Respect. Implying the idea that she was willing just to give it to him, which she could possibly do, and he's like, "No, I don't want that title." And again, that sort of goes back to the whole thing we talked about with like Rudius and titles and all that kind of stuff. It's like it has no meaning in sometimes, but it also is just puts a big bullseye on you. It's better not to have the title. What Rudius is dealing with right now, being on the 7 Great Powers, please take me off that list. Can I submit a complaint to get myself off the list? When Rada was still alive, she had entrusted him to manage the training hall and with Isolde's future. Interesting. Perhaps your standards are too high. I don't think so. You're talented and important. You are in a position to choose a suitable match. But if you're too picky, you'll run out of options. I know that. Her older brother was a humbling presence in her life. They had lost both their parents while they were still young. Happily, they had their grandmother, the water god. So, they weren't destitute. But their grandmother had been too busy to closely watch children. It was Tantris, who had filled the role of Isolde's parent back then, supporting and raising her. A good boy. In the training hall, ability was everything. By the time she was 10, Isolde had already outstripped her brother. Even so, she deferred to shared history. You don't need to consider the honor of the Kul family. A harsh destiny will surely await you as a water god. Forget about looks or titles. Find a confidant. Isolde was silent. Tantris was already married and a father. Isolde had met his family, of course, but she did not have a particularly favorable opinion of his wife. She was the daughter of an Osford noble family. The marriage had been orchestrated solely to foster ties with the water god Rada. What? Oh, the other noble family was, okay. I'm like, wait, that's her grandmother. Why would they have to foster ties? Oh, the other family, again, she doesn't like this wife, but this other Osford noble family marriage in. Okay, I don't know why my brain just completely read that wrong. I'm like, what does that doesn't make any sense. Somebody trying to get in chumming with Rada, and they're using this guy. She obviously looked down on Tantris, and she had a low opinion of sword fighters. In fact, she hadn't visited the training hall even once. Though they had a child together, she and Tantris were practically separated. It was because Isolde didn't want to end up that sort of marriage, that she is being cautious in her choice of a husband. There we go. I was wondering if it was just strictly the fact that she was just being a little bit dumb about the whole situation, but this is it. This is why she's being picky. Literally see what happened to her brother, and she's being super picky. I admit I have sort of a similar problem with my life in how I deal with relationships, of what I've seen around me with, friends and families and whatnot that have dealt with this sort of situation with relationships, that it does give you a little pause there, but not to her levels. Of course, she was not so careful as to not be bowled over by a pretty face. All the same. Yeah, suddenly out of all the restrictions go out the window once they look pretty, right? We could get past all those problems if they just look pretty. All the same, she had set a standard that they had to be at least intermediate tier swords fighter. She didn't think that she was hung up on titles. I guess the idea of the intermediate tier sword fighter is the idea of at least understanding her a bit, or at least being strong or protect themselves. I don't understand why she's stuck on them having to be a swords fighter. Her opportunities to guard Ariel had increased since she became a sword instructor, and as a result, the people that she talked to all had titles as well. Yeah. You're not going to find love at your job site. She would have been fine with a poor noble, a commoner, or even an adventurer if it came to that. They just had to have something to make up for it. I don't mean to be picky. Then why not leave the choice to me? Yeah, that was kind of wondering, because I thought that she was possibly of a noble family, and that possibly she could just be assigned a husband. No, I'll at least find my own husband myself. Isolde wouldn't budge. It didn't help that Tantris only introduced her to ugly men. It's stuck on looks. While she insisted she wasn't being picky, she wouldn't compromise on that point. Marriage with them was all but impossible. It's definitely kind of leading itself into Dohga. I mean, he wasn't ugly. He just had a child's face. I see. Tantris wouldn't openly criticize her. This would not be the first time that the water god went without a partner. The continuation of Cluel's bloodline was being taken care of by him. He did wish to see his little sister happy, and as she wanted a husband, he wanted to support her. That being said, if she didn't desire his help, then Tantris wasn't going to force it. He might not have talent, but he still knew the way of the water god style. By the way, Isolde, weren't you summoned by Her Majesty today? Yes. You're not going to be late, are you? I have time. It would be terrible for you to keep Her Majesty waiting. Let's leave it at here for today. Very well. I'll be back later, brother. Isolde bowed, then returned to her room. She would make herself presentable before she was off to the palace. Again, this like I was saying earlier, this is exactly what I wanted to get into. Getting more insight into Isolde and her family relationship and what she's going through. Very interesting. When she was gone, Tantris let out a sigh. A marriage before she took the water god's name is looking impossible. He thought this as he made the way to the training hall to instruct the students. Isolde walked through the silver palace of Asura. Her silver breastplate, upon which was emblazoned by a crest of a shield-bearing battle maiden, clinked with each step. Her blue and white cloak billowed behind her, and her boots clicked as she strode along. The soldiers on patrol who saw her pass stood in attention, planting their spears on the ground. Their eyes were full of longing. Everyone in the palace knew the name of the Water Emperor Isolde, and her noble figure was the object of many soldiers' admiration. Few would dream her thoughts were occupied by things like, I don't want to be a spinster, and I wonder if there's any good guys around. She's like all elegant walking by, and the entire time she's like, I'm going to be alone forever. Oh, I'm never going to find a guy. Oh, I'm going to hang out with Teresa again at the bar and whine about how we can never find a guy, even though we're super freaking hot. Why, if it isn't Miss Isolde, where are you off to? A man stood before her, blocking her path. Weedy and short, with thinning hair, he made for a pathetic figure. He was perhaps in his early 40s, a human, and he looked of someone that Rudius might have called an office deadweight. He didn't look anything like a warrior or a swordsman, but he wore the silver breastplate like Isolde's own, though it bore a different design. His depicted a praying maiden in a murrel crown. Lord Ifrit, I hope you find you well. Yes, well, we're all the same rank, so you needn't kneel. Sylvester Ifrit was one of the 7 knights of Asura, known as the Royal Fortress. With a name so ill-befitting his face, he held the highest authority in the guards of the Silver Palace. Isolde was a mere knight. This made her a noble, albeit a lowly one. Sylvester stood at the top of all the knights and soldiers in the palace, and was a mid-ranking noble to boot. By custom, Isolde ought to have moved to the one side of the corridor, knelt, and stayed that way with her head bowed until he had gone by. My lord, we're both Her Majesty's knights, he said, his voice suddenly sharp. Isolde snapped upright. Very good. It's not the nation we serve, but Her Majesty. The queen is the only one you ought to kneel to. His aura was so formidable that Isolde only nodded. Sylvester was a small man. He was prone to illness, and he wasn't robust. He wasn't much of a swordsman, nor was he especially good at magic. Yet he had graduated second in his class from the Royal Knights Academy. He was a master of finding talent and training it up. This was a man who truly understood the importance of putting the right people in the right jobs. And it was because of this single talent that Ariel summoned him back to the capital, from the backwater corners of the kingdom, and made him her knight. Yeah, I'm kind of wondering right now, it's like, who is this person? I feel like Isolde's got all these weird people around her that just keep popping up left and right, and it's like, okay, Dohga's interesting. Okay, Sander's interesting. Okay, now Sylvester's kind of interesting. Who the hell are these people that are popping up out of nowhere? Because it kind of put in this weird position where he's supposed to be higher than Isolde, and yet she's like soon to be the water god. And it's here. It's because he's simply really good at finding talented people. He's able to find incredibly talented people. Despite the fact that he's not incredible with a sword, despite the fact that he's not incredible with magic, it's simply because that's his position. Where are you off to anyways, Miss Isolde? Her Majesty summoned me. Her Majesty, you say? Well, then, I won't hold you up. Don't you need something from me? Oh, it's nothing all that important. My boy said he wanted me to introduce him to you, so if you'll forgive me to indulge my foolish son, I merely wish to ask you to meet him, should you have time to spare. Isolde would have liked to bite. She was intrigued by the talk of a foolish son, but her liege had summoned her. Thank you for telling me. Let's speak more about this when you have time. Saying this with composure, she hurried on her way. As she made her way deeper into the palace, she passed fewer and fewer people. There were fewer soldiers in plain armor, and more knights in expensive armor. These knights were only lower-ranking nobles, but they too had sworn their loyalty to Ariel. There was next to no chance they would betray her. In the innermost palace, there were fewer people still. Here there were neither soldiers nor knights, only empty corridors. Occasionally, she passed an unusually sharp-eyed maid. In truth, bodyguards, but no one else. These were Ariel's people, loyal to the bone. Then there was the royal chambers, where Ariel resided. In front of the extravagant door stood a giant of a man, clad in golden armor. And holding an enormous battle axe. Here's my boy! Here was the mightiest guard keeper in Asura. The chances of him betraying Ariel were non-existent, as well as being... I want them to get into why he's so dedicated. I mean, they were talking about the idea of him being pretty single-minded, as well as being in the Golden Knights. He was one of the 7 knights of Asura. Dohga, the royal gatekeeper. He wore a golden helmet in the shape of an upside-down bucket, which bore the design of a battle maiden standing in the front of a gate. I'm Isolde Cool, here to see Her Majesty. When she said her name, Dohga slowly stirred to life. His movements appeared sluggish, but Isolde knew that his guard would never drop for a moment. In a crisis, he would swing his battle axe with terrifying speed, and she suspected that if he fought in earnest, she would be unable to get past him. Interesting. Dohga held out his hand to her. Isolde stared at it, her eyebrows twitching. He had a homely face, no coarse, but not to Isolde's taste. She was a little repulsed at the idea of allowing him to touch her. A body search? Go ahead. These were the queen's rooms. It was to be expected. No one could be permitted to bring a weapon into the monarch's private chambers, knight or not. Except for Rudius. Except for Rudius. And Dohga, technically Dohga. Dohga was known for his caution. Even one of the kingdom's ministers would not be permitted to bring so much as a little wooden spoon after Doga's careful inspection. Isolde wondered if he would touch her breast, but decided to endure it. Dohga did not touch Isolde. His hand reached out towards her hair, and in that hand he held something. Isolde looked questioningly at it. Between his fingers, he held a single petal. No. I gotta admit, it's a very cute picture. Isolde looks super cute in that picture. Isolde looks super cute in that picture.
What's stuck?
Huh?
Isolde, you're pretty. Can't leave things like this on you.
Behind his helmet, Dohga smiled warmly. Isolde stared blankly at him, letting the tension in her body drain away. Oh, my weapon. Suddenly remembering, she took her sword from its belt and held it out to Dohga. Dohga did not take it.
Isolde, you're Queen Ariel's knight. Need weapon to protect her.
Isolde went silent. He hadn't done a body search, nor had taken her weapon. As Ariel's knight, she had won this man's trust. This man who numbered amongst the most abled individuals in Asura. When she realized this, her heart began to beat a little faster. She's being like won over that quick. I don't want this guy to touch me. He makes me cringe. Doki doki. He took a petal off me. He trusts me. Doki doki. Okay. But no way. Not with that face. She gave her head a shake, then took a deep breath. And I guess it's nice to kind of see how she's going from, I need this is what I have to have. They have to be an 8 out of 10 looks. They have to be super good looking. I deserve the best, to pretty much slowly chip away to that. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's not that important because the individual itself. I do like to see that these barriers that she's creating is slowly getting chipped away, which I guess was sort of needed for a case of her getting with somebody like Dohga because he's very different. Because of what he is, he's very different. Isolde Cool, requesting leave to enter. Please, come in. Isolde waited until she heard Ariel's reply, then went into the room. The 7 knights of Asura were led by Luke Nodos Greyrat, the royal dagger, who had sworn absolute loyalty to Ariel. The 7 knights held a special position amongst the knights, and were allowed a degree of independence. Isolde was one of them. She was the royal's shield, a fitting title for the Wild God-style swordswoman, who would protect the queen. Isolde, Sylvester, and Dohga were the 3 knights on the left, who were responsible for guarding Ariel. The 7 knights of Asura had sworn absolute loyalty to Ariel, at least in theory. Isolde didn't know how they were selected. They were supposed to be loyal to Ariel, but most of them had come from elsewhere, and had no ties to the kingdom. Yeah, that's sort of the oddity there. And again, it was sort of something I was getting into when it came to Sander, like, how in the world did this guy choose to start following Ariel? There's a side of me that almost kind of felt like this could have been selected through Orsted. That through communication with Orsted, he was saying, okay, I'm going to send this person to you. I'm going to send this person to you. This person's probably a good choice. But it seemed to imply that she found them. It was likely that each had something that guaranteed that they would never betray Ariel. But not Isolde. She knew in her heart that she could turn traitor. She knew it because during Ariel's battle to seize the throne, her grandmother, the last water god, was slain by Ariel's ally, dragon god Orsted. Isolde was a swordswoman. She knew this was the reality of war. Yeah, hopefully we get into that, because that's been sort of a big question mark for me for the longest time. I assume that she just kind of more sworn to the kingdom, not necessarily to her grandmother. As much as she loved her grandmother and was completely broken by what happened there, she gave up on that revenge for the sake of the nation itself. That was my assumption. In death, her grandmother had passed the role of the water god to her. If she turned on Ariel, water god style might be driven from Oster Kingdom. Yeah, I think they implied that. Again, dedication to the kingdom and the style. So she had never thought of betraying Ariel. It was simply a practical consideration. Despite this, nobody who knew her history would ever fully trust her. Interesting. No one could see inside her heart. She might have been nurturing a grudge over the death of her grandmother in secret, biding for her time until she could make her attempt on Ariel's life. Or she might target the killer, dragon god Orsted. Many aristocrats and knights had been murdered when Ariel took the throne, and still harbored resentment over it. They swore their loyalty to Ariel, with blithe expressions, and bided their time. Isolde could easily have been seen to hold such intention, given her position. She had taken the knight's oath, and swore loyalty to Ariel. She hadn't been charmed by Ariel, nor was she a patriot. She had done it to defend her position and her pride as a water god-style practitioner. At present, Ariel's trust in her protected her. But if that changed, Isolde wouldn't stay loyal, under any circumstances whatsoever. This wasn't a plan, just an understanding of what she was capable of, and yet she had been selected as one of the 7 knights. It was an odd choice. There had to be a reason for it. Interesting. Again, seemed to lay out the idea this is very much on a thread. The protection here, the trust here, and her desire for some sort of revenge is literally on a thread right here. It's not cut and dry. Isolde, would you be open to me arrange a few meetings with potential marriage partners? When Ariel made the suggestion to her in the royal chamber, Isolde was extremely wary. Why involve yourself, your majesty? Because you're going to be a water god. It will benefit me as well if you were to settle down with someone. The candidates I have in mind are all related to me by blood, and while many of them have some slight difficult proclivities, well, one of them might be to your liking. It's a good move by Ariel. You need to get that tie in there with that revenge aspect. Related to your majesty? You mean royalty? Yes, that's how that works. Potential marriage partners who are royalty. Isolde couldn't help it. I mean, the problem there is they're not going to give up their titles. I mean, they might, given the fact that Ariel has the throne. Her heart began pounding. She was such an easy mark. But when I become water god, they'll have to forsake their family name. Won't that be unfavorable for someone from the royal family? Even without their name, their blood ties remain. There's no requirement that they cut all ties of family, is there? Well, no. Then you need not worry. They understand. I have promised them that even if they marry you, the royal family will continue our unwavering support. You only need to meet them and choose the one you like best. This had to be a scheme to win her over, Isolde thought. Yeah, the terms were too good. Even if they were from a minor branch, royalty related to Ariel by blood were genuine princes. Their chances of becoming king might be microscopic, but still. Also, everyone in Ariel's family was good-looking and sophisticated. Well, I think it's an appealing proposition. It is, Isolde replied with enthusiasm. She had no reason to refuse. If she had been a worldly Austrian noble, she might have considered what Ariel left unsaid and refused. Alas, Isolde was only a swordswoman, and a maiden looking for a husband to boot. She didn't read much into it. Fail. Very good. Please let Luke or Sylvester know when you're free. I will take care of the rest. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Yes. You may go now. Isolde left Ariel's chamber as though in a dream. Marriage meetings with royalty. Oh my gosh. My respect for Isolde is dropping a lot right now. Maybe it was her imagination, but she barely felt the floor beneath her. Her heart pounded. She would go to Sylvester immediately and tell him her day off. Gosh. As she was thinking, she realized her throat was parched. Maybe she had been a little nervous over being summoned unexpectedly. I'm thirsty. Just as she murmured to herself, someone called out to her from behind. Isolde dropped into a lower stance, spun around, and came face to face with Dohga. He was holding a tiny cup, entirely out of proportion from his massive body.
Here, it's cold.
Isolde took it slowly. Thank you. For a moment, she wondered if it was poisoned, but then she tipped the contents into her mouth and gulped it down, feeling the water permeate deep inside her. Isolde realized that she was more nervous and much more tired than she thought.
Isolde, good work.
He smiled. Even through the slit in his helmet, she could tell that he had no hint of ulterior motive. He was attentive. The thought came naturally to her. This was a man whom she let watch her back. Too bad his face wasn't to her taste. Aw, again, we're gonna slowly see these barriers breaking again. I know what Refugion's doing. I know what Refugion's cooking. Look at how much she's so stuck on looks and how she's so stuck on position. She's stuck on this.
Dohga. Good boy, Dohga.
That's just simply being good boy Dohga. He's a good boy, and yeah. I think of everybody, I mean, maybe Sander, but like of everybody of Mushoku Tensei series who would have watched my back besides Orsted. Orsted would probably be the top there. But Dohga, you good boy. Same to you, Dohga. Keep up the good work with your guard duties. Well, it was what it was. Imagining the days of meeting with prospective marriage partners who awaited her with sharp-toothed grins, Isolde went on her way. Chapter 2, Dohga, the Gatekeeper. In the Kingdom of Asura, there was 7 warriors known as the 7 Knights of Asura. They swore absolute loyalty to Ariel Animoy Asura. Their leader was Knight Banneret Luke Notice Greyrat, the Royal Dagger. The 3 Knights of the Right presided over defense. They were Sander von Grander, the Royal Greatsword, Oswald Eros Greyrat, the Royal Halberd, and Ghislaine de Doldia, the Royal Guard Dog. The 3 Knights of the Left presided over defense. Yeah, I don't know if we've ever met Oswald yet. I don't think we've met Oswald yet. The 3 Knights of the Left presided over defense. They were Dohga, the Royal Gatekeeper, Sylvester Ifrit, the Royal Fortress, and Isolde Cluel, the Royal Shield. Of these 7, the backgrounds and origins of some were widely known, but half of them have been scouted, especially by Ariel and Luke. Again, they're leaving no room open for the idea of it being Orsted related. It's simply them just hunting down these individuals, offering them something they want, or some possibility they are looking for. They were a motley bunch, comprising commoners, nobles of all rank, and a half-human, half-immortal demon. What they all shared was their unswerving loyalty to Ariel. While Isolde suffers for her misunderstandings of what Ariel meant by slight, when she spoke of difficult proclivities, let us turn to the story of another of these knights. Are we getting to Dohga? We're getting to Dohga! You're gonna get to Dohga! This is good stuff. This is stuff I want. I want to learn more about Dohga. He was born in a little village in the Donati region of Asura, a little slow at times. The other children looked down on him. He was a healthy child, sturdy built, and never got sick. His father was one of the few soldiers who protected the village and was seldom home. He hardly ever had a day off, and it wasn't unusual for him to be out all night. When the boy was 5, his little sister was born. She was a sweet girl, just like her mother. But their mother's recovery after the birth went poorly, and she died. The boy cried. He hadn't so much as whimpered when his friends had punched him, or when a mosquito stung him. But now, he wailed. As he wept, his father told him, "It's all right to cry now, but when you're done, you are to protect your sister for me." The boy looked up at his father, who was holding his little sister, and nodded over and over again. From that day on, the boy stopped crying. He faithfully did as his father told him. He protected his little sister. Yeah, literally, like, his entire mindset and brain has been formed around this one concept. I'm already seeing it go in that direction. Literally, his entire state of mind is formed from his childhood. He decided the way to do this was to guard the entrance of the house. Literally the doorkeeper. He literally was born to become a doorkeeper. He took the axe they used for firewood in hand and stood outside the door all day long. It was only when his sister started crying that he ran back inside to tend to her. His friends laughed at him when they saw him. "What are you doing? Go watch her inside." The adults of the village said, "Why don't we take her and watch her? We have lots of children already. Another won't be any trouble." But the boy dug his heels and refused to listen. He learned how to look after a nursing infant, and he would not leave the care of his sister to anyone else. During this time, something unusual happened in the village. One night, all the hapless animals inside one of the barns were devoured. From the footprints, the villagers guessed it was a wolf. The soldiers ran around the village, telling the villagers they must bolt their doors and not open them under any circumstances. The next day, the animal struck a house. Somehow, the wolf had slipped inside, under cover of darkness, and snapped a child's neck with its jaws, killing them instantly before escaping through a window. When the family woke up in the morning, none of them knew what had happened. They followed the trail of blood until, just outside the village, they found the baby's clothes lying in a pool of blood. It drove them half mad. As more incidents followed, the soldiers realized their guess had been wrong. The creature stalking the village was not a wolf. It was a monster. It was small, no bigger than an ordinary wolf, but a vicious monster nonetheless. They were right. It had a head of a wolf and the hind legs of a wolf, but monkey arms sprouted up from its shoulders. It could walk on 2 legs when it chose, and it could climb trees. Though it was only the size of a large dog, its head was too large for its body. It was a clever mutant that had learned the taste of human flesh. As though it relished the villagers' terror, It lurked in another household's wheat fields. For a day to select its target, it chose its next house because the adults did not come home at night. The father went hunting for the monsters elsewhere, leaving the two children helpless, licking its chops. The monster used its monkey arms to climb up onto the roof, then slipped down the chimney. The next day dawned. When his nighttime patrol was over, the boy's father went back to the house. The first thing that met his eyes was a pool of blood. No, he gasped, his face pale. He looked around the house and immediately saw a mangled corpse on the floor. It was the monster, its head split in two. Standing between it and his daughter, who was sleeping peacefully in her bed, was his son. The boy clutched the firewood axe with his legs planted firmly apart, a ferocious look on his face. It had been a desperate battle. The boy was covered in blood, and his arm was broken. But the children were alive. The monster had been small, yes, but had still been the size of a wolf. In other words, twice the boy's size. Dohga protect his sister. And she's still sleeping. She's just chilling over there sleeping. He's just like,
I got Dad.
The child had beaten the monster to death with a blunt firewood axe to protect his sister. For the boy, who would later become North Emperor Dohga, this was his first battle. Dohga was a gatekeeper all his life. When he was 10, he guarded the gate of the village. Just before the displacement incident, there was a great rampage of monsters. They sprung up from out of the forest through the kingdom, and many villagers were swept up in destruction. I wonder if that's the same one they were talking about with Sarah. Some were swallowed up in the stampede. Dohga's village was attacked as well, but Dohga took up his woodcutter's axe with undaunted valor, and he drove them off. It was said that he had slain anywhere between 50 and 100 of them. However, despite the great mound of monster corpses that Dohga created, his father was killed in the fight. Dohga stood before his father's lifeless body, stunned. A knight who saw him fight recommended that Dohga go join the guard of the kingdom's capital. Dohga was reluctant, saying he was protecting his little sister. This is what the knight told him. Listen well, boy. We leave our families to ride out to all corners of the kingdom, protecting its villages. When the kingdom is safe, our families can live in peace. Protecting the kingdom means protecting your family as well. Yeah. Dohga was not bright, and at the time, he did not understand what the knight was saying. In the end, it was money that convinced him. With his father dead, he needed a way to make ends meet. I mean, guard for the village, they don't get money for that? He was told that if he went to the capital, he could earn enough money for his sister to live on. So that decided that. Dohga became a soldier of the royal capital. I would just take your sister over there, really. He was posted to a little gate that separated the slums from the lower class citizens district. The gate existed as a bottleneck for when the people of the slums grew unruly and stormed the lower class district. It was forbidden for any to pass at night, but otherwise it had no special importance. It was a suitable post for an uneducated boy from the countryside. The room he and his sister were given to live in was small but serviceable. Okay, so he did bring her with her. From there, he went to work at the barracks. He stood at the gate from morning to night, and sometimes even the whole night that followed. Although slow, Dohga was also strangely endearing. At first, some of the other soldiers resented that, at barely 10, he was serving with them. So 10, geez. I knew he was going to be young, but 10. But his innocent nature and steadfast dedication to his sister melted the hearts of his comrades. And before the first year was up, they had recognized him as one of their own. He began his second year. One night, a woman came running to Dohga's gate. She threw herself on him, begging him for his help. When Dohga hesitated, a group of hard-faced men appeared and yelled at him. Hand over the girl. Dohga was confused. He didn't know what to do. If only Hans, who was supposed to be on duty with Dohga, hadn't been napping, he might have decided for him. When the woman saw Dohga's confusion, she tried to dash away through the gate. Dohga immediately grabbed her by the collar and pulled her back. He had been told that no one was to pass the gate at night. In a moment, the men, sensing the woman was going to get away, attacked. Dohga swung his battle axe, a farewell gift from the village smith when he had become a soldier. He killed all the men. At the sight of Dohga standing there, drenched in blood, the woman wet herself, then sunk down on all fours. I'm assuming she was with them. Hans came running, drawn by the noise. He stopped short of the sight of the carnage at the gate. This, he thought, was going to be bad. Dohga had committed an act of indiscriminate murder. Hans had been asleep. The blame would fall on him, too. His face gray, he went to check the corpses. Then he realized he knew those faces. It was a gang of thieves who had been running wild through the lower class district. This lot had been giving the guards trouble because the knights wouldn't bother with this lowly district. And Dohga had wiped them all out single-handedly. Dohga was promoted. I was waiting for them to get into the idea that the girl was working for them too, that she was basically running through there and acting like she was a victim just to get past. He went from being a soldier who guarded the gate between the lower caste district and the slums to a soldier who guarded the gate between the middle class district and the lower class district. For some reason, Hans went with him. I'm about to say, the dude is like riding his coattail or what? Getting carried. Doga over here carrying Hans. Doga stayed at that gate for some time. Some days it rained, some days the gale blew through, but he stood watch through it all. Even after he came of age, he stuck to it. He was slow, so Hans helped him. Along the way, Hans came to understand Doga better than anyone. Doga's sister grew up to be a beautiful young woman, and she and Hans were married. Damn it, he being carried. Even in a relationship, he carrying Hans. He even gave him his sister. How young is she at this point, though? Perhaps Hans had been eyeing his sister all along. I mean, if Doga approves of it, because that's your biggest problem, I'd be afraid of touching Doga's sister. But that didn't matter to Doga. He knew that while Hans might nap on the job, he wasn't the bad sort. He swore to St. Millis in front of Doga that he would make his sister happy. But when Doga found himself alone, with his sister married, he fulfilled his father's instructions through to the end. He no longer needed to guard any gate. It's so funny now that I think about it. It's like, yeah, technically, what was the gate when he was with Rudius? The gate was the cave entrance. That's why he was at the cave entrance. This is Doga's thing. Watch the doors. Yet Doga stayed at his post. Some days it rained. Some days a gale blew through. But he guarded the gate. On one such day, the city was rocked by a great shock. Ariel Anemoy Asra had announced her coronation. A coronation ceremony was a celebration that lasted for days. The soldier would get a pay raise for the duration as well as free food. Doga's comrades were delighted. Hans even did a little dance. I'm surprised they didn't get into sort of how things were when Ariel entered. Like, it seems like it's kind of just going straight through this and then suddenly, oh yeah, coronation happened. I would assume that he came here before Ariel even arrived. So he was guarding the gate during the previous reign. This also meant they would have to do more work. Security needed to be tightened, not only for the middle class district, but throughout the entire city. Temporary guards were recruited from amongst city folk, while Doga and the others, who were already soldiers, were assigned to guard more important locations. Doga and Hans did their job with gusto, thinking they would buy Doga's little sister something nice with their extra wages. One day, around halfway through the coronation, Doga found himself guarding the servants' entrance to the palace. Few people passed there, but every now and then, a servant with a pass would come through. Hans was not with him. Doga guarded this gate, together with several other soldiers. A man came along. He wore a shabby old armor and carried a long staff. That is Sunder, the intermediate tier swordsman. I couldn't convince you to let me pass, could I? I seek an audience with Queen Ariel. Of course, the guard of the gate turned him away. I seek an audience. So this is before he even joined, presumably. No, I want to say that when Rudius first met Sander, it was after coronation, because she was in the chambers. Well, she was in the chamber before she was coronation, but yeah. None may pass this gate without permission. Produce your pass. I do not have a pass. I would like to beg an audience with the queen. No pass. No passage. Away with you. I have no choice then. I'm glad I came to this gate. Thought I might have to cast a pall at Her Majesty's glorious occasion. He tried to force his way through the gate. His staff moved like magic. In an instant, the other gatekeepers were knocked to the ground. But not Doga. No matter how many times the man drove the butt of his staff at Doga's vital spots, he remained standing. Doga swore his axe the man, but he couldn't touch him. Doga had never before missed a target. He went on attacking Dogally. The man was delighted. Marvelous! I didn't think I'd find a man hidden away in a place like this. All right. Out of respect for your strength, I will give up on getting through this gate. I beg your pardon. As a token of my apologies, how about becoming my apprentice? You've got talent. Doga had no idea what the man was talking about. The man seemed to have been given up on the idea of getting through the gate, but the moment he relaxed, he passed out. He didn't even drop. He was out cold and still standing. When he woke with a start, the man was still there. He was holding Doga's axe and appeared to be guarding the gate. I love him so much. I love Xander so much. Like, he fights Doga. Doga passes out. And he wakes up to find freaking Xander just standing there and holding up the fort for him. Okay, I guess I'll wait for him. Go on guard duty. Except he was surrounded by a throng of soldiers. Good morning, kid. I've been guarding the gate for you. That was how Doga met Sander, otherwise known as Alex Ryback, North God Kalman II. The day that Dohga became Sander's apprentice, he went home and half collapsed into bed. There had been a healing magician amongst the soldiers who came running, so none of the damage was permanent. His battle with North God Kalman had drained every drop from his bottomless reserve of strength. For the first time in his life, he fell asleep out of exhaustion. He slept for 2 days, then woke up. At his bedside was his sister, tears streaking on her face, and Hans, who looked relieved. Also, there was Sander, who was inappropriately cheerful. Let's do it. Come on, get up. Time to exercise. Good morning, apprentice. Come with me. In a terrific display of strength, Sander pulled Dohga on his feet, then got him his armor and made to lead him off somewhere. Dohga, not understanding, looked at Hans for help. Hans like, what do you want me to do? The dude beat you. What do you want me to do? Sorry, Dohga. I don't really know what's going on either, but I think you're being honored. So look, go along with him for now, eh? You do your best, and don't be rude. Yes, brother, please do your best. Everybody's so confused. Everybody's just as confused as Dohga. Dohga, not following Hans' train of thought at all, looked around in confusion, but he couldn't fight Sander's strength. And so, they set off to the gate he had guarded the other day. When they arrived, Sander pulled out a pass with a florist to let them through. Just like that, they were inside the palace. Dohga followed behind Sander, amazed by the first glimpse of the glittering halls. Before he knew it, there was a pretty woman with blonde hair in front of them. This is the boy? Yes, your majesty. I wish to speak to him a little. Sander gave Dohga a shove in the back, so that he was standing directly in front of the woman. She was divinely beautiful. I'm Ariel Anamoy Asra. And you are? Dohga did not know that name. Though he was a city soldier, he was unaware of the queen. Naturally, he had never seen her either. Before he knew it, Dohga found himself kneeling. For some reason, he felt he ought to.
I'm Dohga.
Why did you become a soldier?
Dad said protect little sister, so...
Dohga struggled with speaking. He had never been eloquent enough to recount his life to anyone, but Ariel readily accepted what he said. To protect your sister? Very admirable.
But now Hans protect my sister. I mean, they're together now.
At a glance from Ariel, the knight beside him supplied. His younger sister married a soldier named Hans. Dohga didn't know this, but the knight was Luke.
So I don't really have to protect her anymore.
Ariel smiled at Doga's slightly dejected expression. You are wrong, Dohga.
Huh?
You do still have to protect her.
What do you mean?
Hans is your younger brother now. That means you have to protect them both. You have to do twice the work. She gonna rope her into this. She playing right into his brain. This was a shock to Dohga. He hadn't thought about it like this. She was right, though. Hans, who said he would protect Doga's sister, had started to call him brother. Dohga was his older brother. Yep, they're all family. They're all family now. It's true. You got the truth in there. He had to protect his little sister, so obviously, he had to protect his little brother, too.
Oh, I need to protect them more.
That's right. If you keep doing what you've always done, you might not be able to protect either of them.
Why?
You are strong, but your reach is short. It may be the two of them run into danger where you cannot help them. Dohga looked at the palm of his hands. He remembered how his father died. He had been so close, and yet a monster had killed him when Dohga wasn't looking.
Then what should I do?
Protect me.
Huh?
I serve the kingdom. I make it better. By protecting me, you will protect the kingdom. And by protecting the kingdom, you will protect your brother and sister. I mean, she's not wrong. It's a little manipulative. She obviously has things that she wants of him. So she's obviously going to bend it the way that she wants to make it kind of fit. But it is not wrong. If they're in this kingdom and it's not ran properly, they will die. You can't always watch them. Like he said, father was right there, but I look away for a second. Dohga can't always be at their sides. So the kingdom itself needs to be remaining safe. If Ariel can do that, then protect Ariel so that she can do that. And yes, technically, if she gets in good grade, if this position, I would assume, gets paid really well, you could move them out of more dangerous territories within the kingdom. Move them up class. Dohga didn't understand. What did protecting this woman in front of him have to do with protecting Hans and his sister? He was completely lost, but Ariel was serious. He remembered that someone else had told him something similar. The knight who had given him a letter of recommendation to join the city guard. Listen well, boy. We leave our families to ride to all corners of the kingdom, protecting its villages. When the kingdom is safe, our families can live in peace. Protecting the kingdom means protecting your family as well. He could easily connect to the two of them. I can see that. At the time, he didn't know what he was being told. It was money that had spurred him into action. Now he felt like he understood. After all, even when he was protecting a totally different place, his sister and Hans lived happily. Keeping the area safe, yeah? Dohga, will you swear loyalty to me? Will you protect me? By extension, the kingdom?
Yes, Your Majesty.
Very well, Dohga. I name you a knight. On that day, Dohga became one of the 7 knights of Asra. Again, it implied the idea that Sander spotted him. Sander seen something in him, made him become his apprentice, and presumably brought him to Ariel. Probably seen that he was easily manipulatable. Since then, Dohga had guarded the final gate, the door to the royal chambers. Sometimes, on Ariel's orders, he went to other places. For a few hours each day, he practiced under Sander's tutelage, a short distance from Ariel's chamber. On the one day each month he had leave, he went to eat dinner with his sister and Hans. When Dohga wasn't there, someone else guarded the royal chambers in his place. Usually, it was Isolde, the royal shield, but that was not the case in the beginning. I mean, right there, it kind of implies the idea that if he's able to leave it to Isolde, then he can trust her with a sword. After being made a knight and given his shining gold armor, he had stubbornly refused to budge from the front of his gate. Now that he had made up his mind to protect it, he couldn't hand it off to anyone who'd do the job half-heartedly. For his first month, he would not surrender his post to anyone except Sander. If Ariel had not ordered him to rest, he would have stayed on guard for days without food or drink or sleep. I mean, he was doing the same with his sister. He performed body searches on everyone who approached the royal chambers without distinguishing between man or woman. He would confiscate even the tiniest fork. It was around this time that a new member joined the 7 Knights of Asra, Isolde, the royal shield. She had her job as a sword instructor, but back then, before Ghislaine joined them, she was the only woman amongst the 7 knights. It was decided that she was the ideal choice for the queen's personal protection. One day, it was decided that Sander would travel to the Asra kingdom to put together the Golden Knights. Without Sander, there'd be no one who could fill in for Dohga. If he stood there for a full month, he would collapse. So Sander set up a match between him and Isolde. At the time, Sander had Dohga introduce himself as North King. Interesting. I wonder if he was emperor at the time. He had only just begun training, but he was extremely skilled. Yeah, I would assume that he hasn't reached that point yet. Even so, Isolde wiped the floor with him. She moved like the wind, turning aside his blows from his battle axe, then hammering him with one counterattack after another until she brought him down. If they had used real blades in fighting to kill, Isolde would have slain Dohga in an instant. Dohga had been an inexhaustible supply of strength, but he lost without laying so much as a finger on her. This woman, slender as a flower, had turned aside the blows from an axe broader than she was, then stunned like a delicate thorn. Yeah. After taking strike after strike, Dohga accepted that this was the person worthy of guarding the door in his stead. He also understood something. The woman was a delicate and beautiful flower, untouchable by the likes of him. Dohga was in love. So he was the first one. Yeah, that would explain why he'd be seemingly trying to pursue her. You seem down lately. Dohga was at dinner with his sister and her husband. The food on the table was simple, but there was just enough to fill even Doga's giant belly. On the other side of the table sat his sister and Hans, and beside Hans, their lovely daughter. Dohga, a brimming tankard of wine in one hand, looked blankly at Hans. Are you not feeling well?
Why?
Dohga said as he tried to mask his inner turmoil. Hans pointed to the food. You've barely eaten. Dohga looked. It was true. He'd hardly made a dent on his food. He loved his sister's cooking. Usually, Dohga gulped down the food in silence, happily stuffing his cheeks until he polished everything off. The same went for the wine, which was his favorite. It was only drunk to celebrate occasions, but when they had it, he drank like a fish. Hans kept an entire barrel on hand for those occasions. Had to keep a barrel just for him. Yet for some reason, Dohga had only eaten half his food, and he had only sipped his wine. Something was wrong. Dohga was in love. If you don't feel well, you get one of the palace healing magicians to look at you, alright? They do that for you. What with you being a knight now, yeah? Though I have to say, you look healthy enough. Dohga tilted his head, face blank. He didn't realize there was anything unusual about himself. If you're worn out, why not ask for a few more days off? I know you're a hard worker, and you've got an honorable job in guarding Her Majesty. If you push yourself too hard and collapse, then where will you be? Not that I can imagine you ever collapsing. Dohga nodded and started to eat. Something was definitely off. The food tasted how it did. Delicious. It just felt wrong as he swallowed it. Usually, it was more munching and gulping and yelling, bring out the next dish. Not today. Every time he swallowed, his stomach rejected it. It was like the feeling of being full, but more unpleasant. The wine was strange too. It was tasteless. This had never happened to him before. Perhaps he really was sick or, like Hans said, worn out. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really gotten an impression of somebody being so worried about something they lose their taste. I know that the anxiety and whatnot can definitely make you feel full or want to puke, but to get rid of the taste, I think it's more of probably a fact that it's not processing in his brain. He's so focused on something else. Hey now, what's the story? Tell us. When Dohga stayed silent, Hans pressed further. He's a good brother. Brother, Dohga, ever since we were guards down the lower city, you've always had my back. If you can't tell me your troubles, I won't be able to show my face anywhere, not even to St. Millis.
I don't know either.
Something must have happened recently at the palace. Anything. Just try to talk. Hans spoke with a serious look. Dohga looked up. Then, just as Hans said that, he went through his memories and, bit by bit, began to talk them through. There was a cat that had lost inside while he was watching the final gate. He had given it some of his lunch, and it had started coming by a lot, which made him happy. How when he was walking through the town in his armor, a young soldier flagged him down to say, "I respect you," which made him happy. Isolde had come by while he was guarding the final gate, then thanked him when he took a flower petal from her hair and gave it to her, which made him happy. When Sander had taught him a new technique, he said, "You really have talent," which made him happy. While he was walking around the hospital, a guard shared a rumor with him that Isolde might get married. That didn't make him happy. And there's the trigger. Happy, 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 not happy. How at a party for the guards, Isolde had come in dressed and been the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, which made him happy. He had seen her dancing with men he didn't know, which hadn't made him happy. How the noble girls had been spreading groundless rumors about Isolde, which made him unhappy. How the time that he killed all those same girls with his giant axe, splattering their blood all over the walls, that made him happy. Just joking. How he had seen Isolde walking together with a handsome man, which had hurt his heart. How Isolde... That's enough. I understand. I understand perfectly. Hans cut off Dohga. He had the general idea now. You're in love with this Isolde, eh? Doga's cheeks burned. He didn't know how Hans had worked that out from what he had said. But he hit the nail on the head. You heard that Isolde is going to get married. Then you saw the things that seemed to give weight to it. And it gave you a shock. After a long pause, Dohga mumbled. The gloom that was hanging over him was palpable. Hans was right. His big brother, who he had thought was oblivious to matters of the heart, was in love. Aww. A memory came back to Hans of his first love. She was the daughter of the greengrocer next to his family's home. They were about 5 years apart in age. They were childhood friends, and she had taken care of him ever since he was small. She was kind, reliable, pretty, and he fell in love with her at only 5 years old. He dreamed of marrying her. When he was older, he thought he would enlist as a soldier. Once he had a stable income, he would ask her hand in marriage. In the summer of the 20th year, she married the butcher's son and took up his family trade. Hans knew her husband, who had already been old in his earliest memories. He would have been about 5 years older than her. Come to think of it, that meant that he couldn't have been that old. At first, Hans was in denial. The man was well built, but he definitely wasn't handsome. Hans was sure that she hadn't really wanted to get married, and that one day he would reclaim her. But a year later, when he saw her happily snuggling up to her husband's arm, her belly huge, it finally hit him. He had cried into his pillow. Ugh. So he's relating to a lot what Doga's going through right now. The idea of the what if and seeing that they're being taken away by somebody else. Maybe if he had told her how he felt earlier, it would have been different. Not that he was unhappy now, of course. If he had married the greengrocer's daughter, he wouldn't have married Doga's little sister. She wasn't like Dohga at all. She was slight and sweet and steadfast. The fruit of their love was now shoveling down food in Doga's place. She was a robust child and bright, not like Hans. Most of all, she was cute as a button. Hans was confident that there could be no one as happy as him, but it had come on the tail of a bitter heartbreak. So I'm guessing a little bit later after he had this discovery, he probably started working with Dohga. Thanks to that experience, he sprang into action as soon as he realized how he felt about Doga's sister. Don't want to mess up again. She might have thought him a little frivolous at first, but Hans had always been a gentleman with her. He worked harder than ever at his job as a gatekeeper, not falling asleep. Since he told her that he loved her, he hadn't been in slept. He hadn't slept with a prostitute once. I thought slept on the job. He hasn't slept with a prostitute once. As a result, he had won over no small number of rivals to claim the happiness he had now. That was why Hans said, "Ask Isolde to marry you right away." Good bro, dude. It's a good bro. Go! Get her, boy! Get her, boy! Don't hesitate. Don't be like me. Dohga looked up blankly. You don't have to get hitched immediately. You could just do a betrothal. You just need to tell her how you feel. Dohga didn't say anything. If you stand by for much longer, you'll regret it.
But
Don't worry whether you're a good match for each other. You're one of Astra's golden knights. We in the guard are proud of you, and we look up to you. Hold your head high. Put yourself out there. Such a good boy. Dohga thought a little. He didn't know what made people compatible, but he knew a little about looks. Isolde was too beautiful to be a good match for him. You don't need to expect anything. Tell her how you feel and get your heart broken. At this rate, you won't be able to wish her well on her wedding day. At these words, Dohga immediately made up his mind. He was going to tell Isolde how he felt. Chapter 3, Isolde and Dohga. This is going to be long retorting. I hopefully we can finish this. How many is it now? Isolde had left the training hall and was at home, sitting across from her brother in the living room. 26. She muttered this, not looking up. Tantris tried to catch her eye, but Isolde kept hers averted. A little bird told me it was you who turned him down. Yeah? Why? Isolde pressed her lips together. It's just, I don't know. They're all fine men, good-natured, gentle, but maybe they're too good. It makes their flaws stand out. What? This girl's picky as hell. She's just like Therese. Therese and this girl need to get together. They were royalty, introduced to her by Ariel. They were young and pleasant, and their conversations had been lovely. But they didn't hold back. Maybe Ariel had said something to them, because they even told her about their fetishes. There was Atali Ophrys Asra, who was good-looking and kind, and said that he'd devote himself to her after they were married. There was Basil Venti Asra, who was good-looking and strong and had a deep understanding of the water god style. There was Carlos Siodos Asra, who was good-looking and elegant, and said he could support the water god style from a financial perspective after they were married. There was Daniel Lapis Asra, who was good-looking and funny, and made her laugh all the way through the conversation. There was Elliot Skuron Asra, who was good-looking and sweet, and made her instinctively want to protect him. The face that must be protected or something. But they told her everything. They told her what they wanted to do to her in bed, and outside of it, and the little outfits they would like to see her in. It was more than Isolde, with her limited experience, could keep up with. They seemed more like they were a little strained in the head. It honestly made her ill. Before she knew it, she cut them off. Isolde had developed a bit of distrust in men. She knew not all men were as awful as these, but no small number of men out there wanted to do these sort of things. She almost wanted to give up on marriage altogether. Yeah, I think it's... She's like, I'm meeting all these guys. They're great. They're good looking. One I want to protect over here. This other one made me laugh all the time. Had so much fun. But it's almost like Ariel told them to be honest or something, and so they're telling me weird crap. I don't think she went to each one of them and said, make sure to talk all weird, unless eventually Ariel plans on sending Dohga to her. I don't think so. I mean, that would be a good choice to do. Her whole point, again, that Ariel wants to get with somebody with her is to lock her down to her family and her bloodline, to not betray her. So I don't necessarily see Ariel sending Dohga to meet her to tie her down. So I think it's just these guys just think that she likes it. Again, these guys are, again, the palace is perverted. These guys are perverted as hell. Ariel's the only one that hides it because she wants the surprise. Everybody else is very open about it. So yeah, these guys are gonna be like, yeah, and so later on you want to go ahead and do this freaky thing I learned about? I've done it a few times with the maids. Yeah, that's royalty. Sorry, Isolde. So you're signing up for flaws such as? I can't tell you. Things I can't speak of. Well, they are Osran royalty. Osran aristocrats were infamous for their perversions. The higher echelons of nobility were too spoiled for normal tastes. That puts you in a tough spot, though. I didn't think you would turn them all down. Not all of them. I mean, there's still a few more. Be that as it may, it isn't looking promising, is it? Whenever she got to choose something herself, Isolde always had the tendency to be selective. I don't like that one. Not that one either. In the meantime, the best options were snatched up by someone else, and she had to take whatever was left. Marriage was no different. All right, this is what we'll do. With due consideration for his sister's personality, Tantris made up his mind. You will marry the next one. But I can't just... I'm sure he won't meet your standards. You'll get hung up on their feelings just because you're in the position to be selective. Once you are married and living together, such flaws will seem trivial. You may grow to appreciate them. I mean, that was sort of my response to earlier. These guys talking about crazy stuff they want to do with her. It's like, it's fine that eventually you want to do that with them, but don't be so upfront about it. The whole idea of like honesty, it's like, no, you get to a point where you find yourself comfortable with that stuff, and then you bring it up. like this is like the one few moments I want to give respect to Rudius because he wants to do that stuff, but what does he do? He stumbles all over himself in his brain, figuring out the great time to actually decide to finally ask it because he's afraid it's going to cause problems. These guys know filters. Rudius is overly filtered. He's got like 5 layers of filters over each other that are blocking the entire flow of air. But he's right here. you're gonna eventually part of marriage is to learn to understand each other. You're not always gonna like everything about each other, but don't jump into it the next one you come up there, because you're gonna find something that might be a flaw that's gonna be dangerous. Tantress didn't like this sort of strong arm logic. He thought Isolde needed time to choose, to get to know the other person to the core. Made him think that this forceful approach could work. Not for these kind of people, dude. Not for these kind of people. I mean, multiple arranged meetings. If Ariel had introduced her to these men, surely she couldn't go too far astray. I would hope that Ariel's giving her proper men that aren't going to be, like, really bad people. That's the other concern there. He gave her too much credit. After a long silence, Isolde made up her mind. All right. It was true. She was being too picky. She'd always been that way, and probably would her entire life. That part of her personality was well suited for the water god style. True. I mean, I think they kind of hinted at that earlier, because of that reserved nature, and that, again, always waiting for the other person to move first. There is an element there where it causes that indecisiveness, or not really indecisiveness, but cautiousness. Not wanting to commit. You always are waiting for the next opportunity. Always waiting for the perfect time to strike. And in a sense, that can always be waiting. And she was on the verge of becoming a water god herself. But when it came to marriage, it was a problem. At this rate, she'd end up spending her whole life alone. The position of water god was esteemed. The people who knew her would give her admiration, praise, and commendations. She would smile back at them, talk to them. Then, when she was feeling good, she would go home to an empty room to eat a meal for one, get ready for bed, and sleep alone. That sounded so empty. He didn't become water god to win praise. Inside, there was another Isolde, separate from the swordswoman. She was always lonely, and that was why she felt empty. She didn't know if a husband and child would comfort the other Isolde. But if she had all the praise in the world, she wanted to come home to someone and say how proud she was of herself. And then, after she was done boasting, her perverted husband would ask her to do something rotten. But she had made up her mind. She had a side of her that just wanted to go home and have somebody to praise her. And she would go home, and after she was done boasting, the perverted husband would ask her something rotten. The position of water god was esteemed. People give her praise and admiration. Then she'd go home where it's empty. You didn't become water god to win praise. Inside, there was another Isolde, separate from her swordswoman. A woman, basically. She was always lonely. That's why she felt empty. She didn't know if coming home to a child and a husband would comfort that other Isolde, the woman inside of her. But if she had all the praise in the world, she wanted to come home to someone that she can boast to. But then they would drag her off to bed. That sounds empty. That sounds super... I'm not sure if I'm reading that right, but it sounds super empty. The first one sounds what she's currently at, and she's empty. And there's a woman inside of her that's not feeling happy. But she's not sure if doing this is going to even fulfill that. But she's going to go along with it anyways. So where and when are you meeting this next candidate? Today. I'm told he's coming to get me in the carriage. Loyalty is coming to pick you up? Yes. There was 3 candidates left. Isolde was unaware of this. But after hearing that she had rejected 5 suitors out of hand, the rest had gotten really serious. They decided the order in which they would meet her through a stringent lottery. They were ready to mount their attack. Just then, there was something that caught Isolde's attention. There's some sort of commotion over in the training hall. The training hall adjoined to the Gorilla House, but this place was the headquarters of the Water God style, so it had quiet flooring to match. Usually you couldn't hear anything where they were, but Isolde was a Water Emperor. She could hear the violence. Could he be here already? It's still a bit too early, but I might have mistaken the time. I better go. I can't run the risk of offending royalty. That's true. Best hurry. Isolde and Tantress shared a nod, then set off to the training hall. You know who it's going to be. Somebody causing a commotion in a silent place like that. He's going over there right then, which is great. He's like, I'm done. I've decided. I'm going over. The hall was in a tumult. The disciples, in their training gear, stood gathered around a man, heaping angry shouts and taunts at him. Master, a challenger has come from a rival school. He showed up out of nowhere and demanded to see you. The blood drained from Isolde and Tantress's faces. If their students had subjected a member of the royal family to such treatment, then the whole training hall would be torn down. Had he not given his name? Stop that! As she shouted, the hall fell silent. Clear the way. That man is my guest. But he's... all of you, on your knees, at the edge of the hall. At Isolde's order, the students scattered like baby spiders and sat down in lines. The students had been trained to do that from way back in her grandmother's time, but that wasn't important. Right now, she needed to apologize. With the students out of the way, Isolde looked over at the man. Huh? But she found herself looking at an enormous man. He was more than 2 meters tall, and his shoulders had to be close to 1 meter across. He was built like a boulder. Isolde knew that boulder. Dohga? Huh? He turned around when she called out to him. It was him, none other than Dohga, the royal gatekeeper, one of the 7 knights of Asura. He looked out of place, almost shrinking back in fear. But when he saw Isolde, a relieved smile broke on his face. I just saved your lives. Isolde spoke to her students. This man is North Emperor Dohga. If he wanted to, he could have taken you all out with one. That was as far as she'd gotten before she realized what Dohga was wearing. That was the knight's ceremonial uniform. Isolde had never seen him in it before. He only ever wore his golden armor or his gray armor. Ariel never said anything about it. In addition to his unusually tight outfit, he had a bouquet in his hands. He would strike you all down with that bouquet of flowers. In the vastness of Dohga's fist, the bouquet looked small, but it was, in fact, enormous. Why are you here? Did something happen to Your Majesty? Is this an emergency? Isolde asked, furrowing her brow. In response, Dohga moved slowly towards her. Then he held out the bouquet in his hand. Could this be? It was a formal uniform, and holding a bouquet. Of course, she also thought, it can't be. But her first thought won out.
Isolde Kulua, I love you. Please marry me.
Oh my gosh, dude. Oh. I love it. It's cute. Could it be Dohga was a member of the Austrian royal family? She I wasn't even thinking that. She was expecting somebody. Could it be that he was a royal family member? She was struck by that thought. Dohga was the only man entrusted with guarding Ariel in her private chambers. Luke was a special case, but even Sander wasn't allowed to bring weapon near those rooms. He even stood outside the door in the middle of the night. As far as Isolde knew, he wasn't a eunuch. People said he was safe and harmless, but he was still a man. With his enormous size and martial skills in North Emperor, breaking into Ariel's room as she slept could have been easy for him. Isolde had always wondered why Ariel had chosen a man like him. If he was Ariel's relative, if they had known each other well since they were kids. She had heard that Dohga had come from a tiny village in the outskirts of the kingdom. But royalty came from everywhere. Just as Ariel had fled once to a faraway land, Dohga might have been hiding during his childhood. Okay, we stop. Move on. Digging too much into this. Isolde. At Tantris's voice, Isolde emerged from the ocean of her thoughts. She might have just avoided a nasty situation. Perhaps Dohga was a dark secret of the Asura Kingdom. They don't want anybody to know this big doofus is one of the members. If she'd been careless, even she might have found herself erased. What's wrong? Tantris asked. She had to face reality. Nothing. She said this, then looked up at Dohga again. He had just said, please marry me. There was no mistaking that. Isolde had once been desperate to hear those words. She couldn't have misheard. Dohga radiated confidence. He had confidently strode in through the front gate, handed her a bouquet of flower, then proposed. Good boy. Isolde had imagined something more romantic, but in the right light, maybe this was romantic. Holding out a bouquet before proposing in front of a crowd of people was on Isolde's list of romantic proposals, though, obviously, in front of a beautiful fountain or a fancy party. Don't be chasing that perfect time, that perfect person. Dohga's perfect. Not in a training hall, suffused with stink of sweat. No, she put that out of her mind. That and many other things too. It's perfect timing, isn't it? Tantris said tentatively. He's another of the glorious 7 knights of Asura. You'd make a well-matched pair. Yes, but I don't... Isolde realized that eyes were on her. The eyes of her students. Let's speak in private. Dohga, please follow me. Isolde turned to go. Hey, you're not going to take it immediately. She's not going to accept it immediately. Isolde turned to go. When she didn't take the bouquet, Dohga looked sad for a moment, but he followed close after. Poor Dohga. That was how Dohga was invited into Isolde's home. Now he sat frozen on the couch, trying to make himself look as small as possible. The bouquet was laid over his knees. Isolde sat opposite of him, her posture regal. Her face gave nothing away. It seemed almost as if she didn't have a thought in the world. Tantris was nowhere to be seen. He had left the pair in the reception room and gone to make tea. Isolde examined Dohga's face. Under her inspection, he assumed a serious expression, but the way that his cheeks trembled made it clear that he was nervous. However, Isolde wasn't concerned about that. She was interested in his face. It was a plain, open face, not her type. Stop it, girl. She could close her eyes to all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, she didn't like what she didn't like. Part of her longed for a chance to reconsider the last 5 proposals. If their specs were otherwise more or less the same, then those 5, by virtue of being nice to look at, were more appealing. Girl, those looks are not going to treat you right. Those looks are not going to treat you properly. Those looks are not going to welcome you home. Those looks are not going to comfort you. Those looks are not going to take care of you. Looks are just what you see for a brief moment. But the next member of the royal family to show up might be less appealing than Dohga. All that aside, that was a matter of her agreement with her brother. She had to decide things here. She let out she still thinks it's part of the royal family. I've already forgotten about that. She's like, crap, I gotta decide now. I told him I was gonna do this. He's gonna say that he's not royalty, and then she's gonna say, okay, then I have another choice. She had to decide things here. She let out a breath, then said, you know, it was a surprise to find out that you're royalty. Dohga gaped at her.
Me? No, not royalty.
Isolde hesitated. Huh? So you were adopted in or something like that? She asked, attempting to obliquely figure out what he was trying to hide.
I born in little village in Donati. Always been gatekeeper. Dad was village soldier.
All she got from Dohga was a story of how a totally unexceptional soldier had risen in the world. Well, perhaps not unexceptional. Isolde listened, trying to glean something from what he said. When he got to the part about crying when his little sister had gotten married, he was so interested. She was so invested, she felt the tears well up. Got the saddest part when she gets married and he welling up.
Then I hear that you, Isolde, get married. Before that, I want to at least say how I feel.
Isolde was silent. He wasn't connected to any of this. He wasn't one of the royals Ariel was introducing her to. In that case, Isolde decided she would refuse him. Too bad, she thought, but she couldn't snub Ariel. But then she thought, why did I think too bad? The answer came at once. Dohga was honest, hardworking, and devoted. Judging from his words, he didn't have an awful bedroom preferences. He was skilled enough to become North Emperor, and he was one of the 7 knights of Asra. He had a stable income. He enjoyed drinking, but he wasn't a violent drunk, and he didn't have any extravagant vices. The only thing wrong with him was his face, and he wasn't that bad. He's not bad looking, golly. He wasn't quite Isolde's type. Again, it's like that whole aspect of like, your type is a face? Your type is a face, girl? In response to Isolde's frown, Dohga, with what looked like a great effort of will, spoke.
Ever since I first see you, I think Isolde is pretty as these flowers. I always love you.
I love this boy. He's trying so hard.
So pretty. Isolde is pretty as flowers. Ever since first see you.
Boy. With that, he held a bouquet of flowers out again. Did you? From the first time you saw me? Isolde's field of view was all flowers. They were a deep blue color. She didn't know their name, but they were beautiful. A little spark ignited in her heart. If Isolde remembered correctly, her first encounter with Dohga had been a fight. She had fought him over a matter of Ariel's security. He had felt this way all this time. Thinking back, Dohga had been a little soft with Isolde. He had always trusted her. He hadn't confiscated her weapon when she went to Ariel's chamber. The fact they were both in the 7 Knights of Asra had to be part of it, but perhaps that wasn't the whole story. As she thought this, Dohga watched on with an earnest face. A face that now seemed about 20% more attractive. Not so bad. It's like that's starting to melt away. That like perspective that you had, this right here is starting to melt away. Striking from the right angle even. Besides, he usually wore a helmet, so you couldn't even make out his face most of the time. Wait. She shook her head. I'm very sorry, but I will be marrying a member of the royal family introduced to me by Queen Ariel. If she were to take up with Dohga now, she could end up bringing shame on Ariel. Isolde was a knight. She hadn't sworn absolute loyalty, but she had sworn loyalty. She couldn't shame her liege just because it suited her whims. Come on, go talk to Ariel. Your gate boy wants me. Okay. You're one of Her Majesty's knights. You can't go against her wishes either, can you? Dohga looked a little troubled, but said, Just like Isolde, Dohga too was a knight. He was also diligent. Even if he wasn't royalty, it was this that won him Ariel's trust and allowed him to become her gatekeeper. He would not betray Ariel either. You may go home now. She thought that he would protest a little, but Dohga stood up at once, then turned away from Isolde. Just like that, he even seemed to be in good spirits. It was as though he had known they would turn out like this from the start. Ow. It's like a yeah. Of course. And was satisfied to have just said it. Isolde was a little disappointed by this. She sighed, then looked at the table. One blue petal lay there. The bouquet was gone. He must have taken it home with him. I wish I'd at least taken the flowers. Girl, go after him, she murmured, then picked up the petal. Isolde refused the next royal suitor who came that day. As a sign, she was supposed to take that one. The next day, Isolde was at the parade grounds instructing. As she went through the forms, she ruminated on the previous day. Her royal suitor had been Fraser, Caesius, Osram. My God, these names. No more names. His perversions had been awful, just like the others, though he wasn't a bad person. Compared to Dohga, however, he struck her as insincere. You get a taste of that Dohga. Go get that taste. Get that taste of Dohga. You can't go away. Still, if she had at least deferred her decision, rather than refusing him, she could have avoided offending him. In any case, there was 2 left. Only 2 left. She'd judge them both carefully and choose one, she thought. Just then, a messenger came for her. Miss Isolde, Her Majesty urgently wishes to discuss an apology. Dohga went to Ariel. Dohga went to Dohga went to Ariel. Dohga totally went to Ariel. I want her. Ariel, please. From that, Isolde guessed that Ariel was going to tell her off for refusing one suitor after another. She'd take her licks. She owed Ariel an apology. Very well. She left the parade grounds. She went to the knight's private room at the exit and brushed herself off. She ought to have washed with water, but given it was urgent, she could get away with not doing so. She set off for the royal chambers at a brisk pace. As she drew nearer the innermost reaches of the palace, she felt something was off. It was noisier than usual. Dohga just flipping out, throwing furniture. Dohga's pissed off. Ariel's like in the corner going, Dohga, stop. Just throw stuff. No, I want her. Usually there was no soldiers and knights here. It was an empty corridor stretching on and on, but she could see agitated soldiers moving out. Did something happen? She wondered. No, the queen's summon took priority. Without pausing to ask any questions, she hurried to the royal chambers. Isolde frowned. Someone who ought to have been there at the door was absent. An enormous man, built like a boulder and clad in golden armor. Astra's mightiest gatekeeper. He's either inside or she's disappointed that it's like Sander or something. That's a sign, girl, if you're disappointed not seeing Dohga. Astra's mightiest gatekeeper never left this place so long as Ariel was in her chamber, Dohga. He was nowhere to be seen. As though to make up for his absence, knights stationed at the palace stood in rows around the royal chamber. No, he's at home sad. He didn't come into work. Watch, he didn't come into work. He's at home sad. They all had weapons in their belts. What a fuss. Even one of them was a veteran as well. There were even knights hailing from low and middle-ranking noble stock who would never usually have been allowed to venture in this far. That would be Sylvester's leadership. He never considered the repercussions of his decisions. Lord Ifrit, Isolde called out, spotting a familiar figure. It was a chief of the palace guard, Sylvester Ifrit, the royal fortress. Miss Isolde, you arrived quickly. What in the world is going on? Sylvester grimaced, as though he was trying to think of where to start. A few seconds passed. Then he shrugged and said, Her Majesty wished to apologize. He might as well have said, go in there and ask. Giving up on getting explanation here, Isolde knocked on the door. Isolde Cluel, to see your Majesty. Please, come in. Ariel sounded the same as ever. In contrast to the uproar, her voice was perfectly serene. Excuse me, Isolde said as she opened the door and entered. A strange scene met her. Ariel sat at her desk. Beside her was Luke, his arms folded and his face exhausted, and her bodyguards, who glared at her with their weapons drawn, ready to fight. Then there was Dohga. Dohga hardly ever left his post, but here he was. He held a golden helmet under one arm and a slightly sad-looking bouquet in his hand. Welcome, Isolde. You were quick. I was in the parade grounds, Your Majesty. What is it? What is all this? Dohga tells me he means to resign as a knight. So he doesn't have to follow our orders. He doesn't want to be disloyal, so he's going to drop his loyalty so that he can pursue her. Oh, okay. Go back to chapter 1. Well, yeah, okay. He doesn't have a name to give up. He doesn't have a name to give up, but he can sacrifice his entire position, which right now is literally at the queen's side. He's got it made. He's about in as good position as a person of his stature will ever be. He is at the queen's side. And just like the original story, for that person of the water god style that's walking out the door and walking out of the kingdom and walking to who knows where, he's giving it all up for the water god style. That's what they're doing right here. I got you, Refugio. I know what you're doing. Dohga tells me he means to resign as my knight, Ariel replied casually. He what? Isolde looked at Dohga. His face was serious. So this wasn't some sort of prank. You mean, why would he do that? By all means, ask Dohga. Dohga, please repeat your reasons. Doga's gaze moved to Ariel. Then he nodded. Isolde, said Queen Ariel's knight, can't marry her. I fixed that, basically. With those brief words from Dohga, Isolde guessed why she had been summoned. No, I only said you can't go against her wishes either, can you? Because I didn't want to bring shame on her. Isolde, be still and let him finish. Isolde felt quiet, but inside, she felt anything but peaceful. If the conversation went the wrong way, it might look as if she incited Dohga to betray Ariel. Yeah, I can see that. In fact, judging from the fuss outside, everyone already saw it that way. Dohga, at Ariel's prompting, he started to speak, haltingly.
I think a lot. I promised Dad to protect my sister. Lady Ariel said protecting the kingdom means protecting my sister. Lady Ariel's queen. So protecting her means protecting kingdom. But my sister tell me, she says I protect her enough.
Oh my gosh, dude. Don't need to do this no more. Stop sacrificing for me, Dohga. Go get your girl.
She has no troubles. So now I protect who I love. I love Lady Ariel. I love this kingdom. But my love for Isolde more special. So I resign as Lady Ariel's knight. Then I protect Isolde.
Dohga boy. He set his helmet down on the desk with a clang. Then he turned and held the bouquet out to Isolde. Girl, you wanted it. He given it to you. Isolde looked at the blue flowers in front of her. The petals slightly wilted. It was the same bouquet from yesterday, the one she wanted. So that was what Dohga has to say. But what do you say, Isolde? Come on, girl, get him. That's totally Ariel. Huh? Faced with a sudden profession of love, Isolde blinked hard. I do not know what terms you have set, but apparently he chooses you over the 7 Knights of Asra. The moment all women yearn for, What do you say? Ariel wasn't going to accuse her of inciting betrayal. On top of that, she was asking Isolde to answer Dohga. But, all the men your majesty introduced me to. Oh, them? Never mind them. Isolde's heart rattled in her chest, even harder than when she faced down the fighting god in the Beharel kingdom. She felt like she was going to collapse. All of a sudden, she remembered the legend of the first water god and the princess, who had thrown away everything to be his wife. Yep. Based on what he had told her yesterday, Dohga was a man with almost nothing. He had his size, his strength, a few relatives, and his post in the 7 Knights of Asra. That was all. He had chosen Isolde. Even if it meant leaving his family and his post, it'd only been a day. He said that he'd thought a lot, but his decision had been all but immediate. Dohga had told her that he valued her above anything else. He wasn't like the nobles or the royal suitors Ariel had sent her. None of them would have pursued Isolde, to the point of casting aside the greatest of their possessions. Just like the princess who married the first water god, Dohga might be the only person in the world who would have loved Isolde this much. And that's what's important, girl. Please. What more could you possibly want? Who cared about how he looked? Before she knew it, Isolde had taken the bouquet, that enormous bunch of blue flowers. They were just a little past their prime. Dohga would have still loved and kept the flowers, even if they withered. Okay, getting into it. In the end, youth and beauty didn't last. It's like one of those moments where I'm like, I'm reading the line. I'm like, there's obviously, I know where Frozen's going with this. Okay, they stayed outright. That's the thing. Like, she's so busy looking for an 8 or 10 out of 10 looking person. And that doesn't matter. Because like I was saying earlier, the looks don't take care of you. The looks don't comfort you. The looks don't praise you. The looks don't do anything for you besides have a look for a brief moment. And it's gonna go away. And then what do you have? They're all gonna look ugly in the end. I mean, some people age pretty well. Eventually you're gonna wither. Eventually you're gonna wither. Then what? I'm yours if you'll have me. Dohga, get her! Get her, Dohga! Get her! I'm so happy, dude. Oh, this is great. Dohga beamed at her as applause broke out from around them. And the people outside are like, oh god, thank goodness. It sounds like everything's going well in there. The story of the proposal in the royal chambers was in everyone's lip after that. Trickling down to even the lowest ranks of soldiers. Dohga, former comrades, cried with joy, and all of Isola's admirers cried in their pillows. Dohga resigned from the 7 Knights of Asra to become Isolde's husband. Instead of Dohga of the 7 Knights, he was Dohga, the house husband, or that was the plan. Wait, what? What? Dohga, the house husband? We have to have 2 people voicing Kindra Suda in that show? We're gonna have Ors and Kindra Suda. We're gonna have Dohga Kindra Suda. But did he? You say you mean to resign as a knight. Isolde is a knight in this kingdom too. So, she is very strong. But if I died and the kingdom became unstable, she could be murdered. You will protect her, of course. But even then, of course, that won't happen so long as I do not die. What do you say, Dohga? While you protect Isolde, could you protect me as well? She's so crafty. You gotta keep protecting me. Right? You gotta keep protecting me. I mean, I think that's what she's deciding in there. Like, I can either tie you with one of my, my relatives, or I'll tie you to the girl and tie you to me. Taken in by Ariel's honeyed words, Dohga remained a knight. Ariel was greedy. She wasn't going to let North Emperor Dohga slip through her fingers. She told him off for creating a scene in the royal chamber and assigned him labor as punishment. But it was nothing very arduous. I mean, he's like, whatever. I'll take it. I'm surprised. I literally thought that they were going to actually have him become a house husband. Because, again, this is after the mainline series, or at least after the Battle of Bahir, like I mentioned earlier. So it's like, yeah, he could have totally became a house husband. Take care of the kids while she's working as the knight. It was thus that both Isolde and Dohga were able to put down roots. The 7 Knights of Asra became more tight-knit, which was a great success for Ariel. She owed favors to the royals she had solicited, but that was nothing. However, because of this marriage, Dohga's time for guarding the royal chamber plummeted. He went home on time every night, and when Isolde went away, he accompanied her without fail. As a result, Isolde ended up shifting into a role of something like Ariel's personal guard. Isolde, however awkwardly, had agreed to marry Dohga. She imposed a dating period before they got married, but it was a year until the happy occasion took place. Because of the delay, even after they were married, rumors went around that it was all one-sided affection on Dohga's part, and Isolde didn't care for him much at all. Her attitude towards him in the palace stayed as chilly as ever. The rumors quickly fizzled out after an incident where Isolde accidentally called Dohga darling in front of the soldiers, before turning bright red and trying to correct herself. Darling, darling. Probably Dama-sama, huh? Dama-sama. People speculated she warmed up when they were alone together, and that was how Dohga and Isolde became husband and wife. Super cute! That was an extremely long recording, but super freaking cute, dude. I love that. That was too good. That was too precious. I mean, besides like how like super sweet this is, and I'm super happy for Dohga. I mean, Isolde's hot. Like, let's just get that out of the way. Isolde's hot. But I was really kind of, I knew they were, no matter what, they're going to end up together. It's like, from the beginning of this, it feels like it's going to get together. It didn't feel like it was going to be like a letdown in the end of like, suddenly Isolde goes, sorry, it can't happen, Dohga, and they never end up together. You knew this, they're going to get together. I think it's more kind of telling about how stuck Isolde was on appearance, and it's obviously the sign of why she never got with somebody. That was the question that Rias always had. Why is this girl not having guys clamoring all over her? That's because she has no interest. If they don't match all these bullet points, she doesn't want to have anything to do with them. She's so stuck on looks and so stuck on the sword skill, and they're so stuck on this and this and this. You have to fill these gaps. You have to hit this criteria here, otherwise it ain't going to happen. Isolde broke through that, thankfully. He broke through it by just being honest and just going right in there and saying those words. Now, it is surprising that even though technically the manga side chapter did emphasize the idea that he said that he'd protect her, when that in I love how I literally started this Mushoku Monday recording saying how, or maybe it was last Mushoku Monday, I started this whole thing by talking about how it has to be somebody that will claim that they will protect her. It never says that. So I'm guessing that side chapter thing was not wrote by Refugien. But it's still cute. It's still cute. But no, very cool to see a little bit more into the Water God style, a little bit more into, I mean, giving a lot of character and personality and life to Isolde's character, learning about Dohga's history. These 3 chapters is literally like the history of Dohga and so much of Isolde's life, which is really cool. So, yeah. With that said, it's a long recording. My gosh, this is gonna be hell to edit. I don't know if I'll end up cutting it in half. You guys will probably know afterwards. I do know next week's probably gonna be like super short, but maybe that'll be a nice trade-off. I'll have a long Mushoku Monday this week, and probably next week will probably be a shorter one, unless the next story is like really long, because I think it's actually like, it literally the length of it is half the length of this one, or maybe even less than that. So it might be like a quick Mushoku Monday next week, but that'll be fine. It'll be a nice, cool off period, but that'll be the last one of Mushoku Monday. So for this redundancies. Anyways, that said, chat, hope you guys enjoyed me running through the story and getting all emotional and happy. It was really cute. It was a really cute story, and unfortunately not enough to like really dig into and chomp onto, but it was cool nonetheless. I did like a little bit of Dohga's stuff, but anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday as always. Thank you guys so much for the premiere. Hey chat, did you have fun? Did you have fun? Thank you guys so much for your support. Hit the like button before you leave. So many people do not hit the like button, and it makes me really, really sad. But I greatly appreciate your guys' support, your kind words, all that good stuff. And yes, greatly, greatly appreciate my support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But until the next Mushoku Monday, which I think next Mushoku Monday, what does it say? The woman they call the Mad Dog. Y'all take care. What's up, chat? Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another direct submit. What's up, chat? Welcome back to another. What's up, chat? Truth be told, I have not actually read. Truth be told, I have not actually read. Who's talking? Please tell me who's talking. I hate when you don't tell me who's talking. Please tell me who's talking. It was Ariel. Okay. There was Etale. Oh my gosh, these names. There was Etale, Orpheus. There was Etale, Orpheus. Asura. There was Etale, Orpheus. There was Etale, Orpheus.